Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, I don't want to mention the P word because we are moving past it now, hopefully. But looking back at the last 2 years of the pandemic, we can no longer underestimate the hit that collaboration has taken in the shift to remote and hybrid working. But today, I want to explore how visual collaboration technology can help restore that. Because let's face it, great virtual meetings don't happen by accident. And maybe that's why Zoom fatigue is something very, very real and something that we've all experienced at some point. So as offices open their doors again, amid the great resignation, project managers are asking themselves, what could have gone better during the pandemic? And what technology do I actually need to redefine the next wave of working? Well, for Dave Groh from Lucid, businesses still haven't cracked the proper remote collaboration platforms. In fact, 75% of employees believe that collaboration suffered most during the pandemic, according to Lucid's own research. And that is the topic for today's conversation. And as it's valued at $3 billion and trusted by 99% of the Fortune 500, I think we should be able to unlock a few invaluable insights today around visual collaboration software. So buckle up and hold on tight because I'm going to beam your ears all the way to Utah, where Dave is waiting to speak with us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about how you got here and share your origin story with everyone?
I started my first internet business back in college, raised some money from friends and family, built and launched a product. And though I started to land some small initial customers, it quickly became clear to me that I just didn't know enough yet. I didn't have strong enough mentors yet to be successful at the scale I wanted to be in entrepreneurship. And so, ultimately, very early on, I pivoted into consulting, went to work for a large firm, Bain & Company, with the idea that I would get broad exposure to industries and business problems and hopefully the tool set to approach and solve them. And about 10 years ago, I received a call then from a friend, Carl Sun, who described to me a small startup he'd recently co-founded aimed at bringing visual collaboration to all knowledge workers. And at the time, I was still at Bain, and I recently spent many months redesigning the engineering process for a large aerospace and defense company, specifically their process of how to design and build helicopters. And I had done all of that extremely painfully in a desktop version of PowerPoint, which enabled virtually no seamless collaboration with the myriad of stakeholders that I was engaged with. And so as my friend described this product, Lucid Chart, that they were starting with, an online collaborative visual application for people, process, and systems design, I immediately caught the vision. And so since joining Lucid about 10 years ago in the basement with co-founders, I've worn just about every hat in the business other than writing code. So I've led product management, marketing, operations, sales, and customer success, and then recently became the CEO of Lucid.
What a story. And as you said, that path led you to Lucid Software, which is this visual collaboration suite, which helps teams see and build the future. And I think it's so important now, especially with so much different data everywhere, and it can all look rather soulless until it's brought to life in some way. But for people hearing about you guys for the first time, can you offer a bit of an overview or introduction of what Lucid is and how you're helping businesses or what kind of problems you're helping them solve?
Yeah, you mentioned it, Neil, but I'll say it one more time. Our mission is to help teams see and build the future. And so in today's world, collaboration is harder than ever, in part because many of us are now working in increasingly remote or hybrid teams. In addition, business is more complex, demanding more and faster change from companies. And so our visual collaboration suite is addressing those challenges and enabling teams to work, communicate, and collaborate the way they work best, visually. And so we do that specifically with our core products like Lucid Spark, a virtual whiteboard where teams can come together to brainstorm and ideate together, and Lucid Chart, an intelligent diagramming application where teams can design and visualize the people, processes, and systems that run their business. And so today we serve millions of users across many, many thousands of companies, ranging from early stage startups to the Fortune 500. And from all of these users and customers, we see visual collaboration bringing clarity to complexity and enabling teams across space and time to move faster from idea to reality.
And I would say you've been quite humble there, because before you came on the podcast, I was doing a little bit of research, and I came across that last year you had raised, I think it was more than $500 million, and the company's now valued at, I think it's something like $3 billion, and trusted by 99% of the Fortune 500, which is just phenomenal. But nearly 12 months later, I've got to ask, where's the company now? What difference has that funding made, especially to how you're serving your customers?
Well, I appreciate that, Neil. We're thrilled about the journey that we're on. First, I'll say Lucid's actually been a very capital efficient business in our history. Yeah. And so that $500 million financing a year ago was actually a secondary transaction, meaning that no new funds came into the business, but rather some of our early investors and backers who have been along on this journey for quite a few years with us could sell parts of their stake. More importantly, what I think that transaction and valuation you mentioned demonstrates was incredible validation of the category we're creating with visual collaboration, and specifically our strategy to help millions of teams see and build the future faster. And for me, what's particularly exciting about the last couple of years is the product expansion that we've been able to offer our customers. For a number of years, starting from that basement, we were primarily focused on Lucid Chart and establishing our leadership in that category. But especially over the last couple of years, as we thought about the journey that teams go through from idea to reality, we recognize a number of unmet needs still in the market, where visual collaboration can bring unique and outsized value. And so that led us to launching Lucid Spark in 2020 and Lucid Scale, a cloud visualization product, in 2021. And so that's where a lot of our focus is today, is how do we continue to serve our customers with best-in-class products along that innovation journey. And the last thing I'll mention is that, we're really focused increasingly on our global opportunity. And so, we have always had users and customers from around the world, but then in the last couple of years, we've really doubled down on, our headquarters in EMEA, where we now have more than 100 Lucid employees, and also our APAC headquarters in Melbourne, Australia. And so increasingly, we're making sure that we can serve every user, every customer, in their geography, in their language, and in the way that they want to work.
And I think every individual listening to this podcast, and most businesses and business leaders, have endured a difficult few years. And most had to quickly adjust to new ways of working. And even the CEO of Microsoft advised that they had experienced 2 years of digital transformation in just 2 months. And one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast today was after I read your recent research on how collaboration and creativity are actually suffering in the wake of COVID-19. And one particular stat that really stood out for me was that 75% of employees believe collaboration suffered most during the pandemic. So can you expand on that and some of the key findings that that research revealed?
Yeah, and for me, this really is framed with a conversation I had early in the pandemic, where I had a call with the CIO of a major public technology company. And essentially what he said to me was, Dave, I'm not concerned about the productivity of my people or the projects in flight. Things are getting done. What keeps me up at night is the next wave of innovation and the one after that. And since then, I've had a lot of similar conversations with other CIOs and leaders, and multiple studies, including ours that you mentioned, showed that, that phenomenon at scale. Essentially, productivity in many cases has stayed the same or even increased, while collaboration and creativity have suffered. And interestingly, there was actually this divergence in the research, which we did last year, between what managers were concerned about and what their employees were concerned about. Managers who had concerns with employees working from home, 86% ranked productivity as the top concern. That said, only 52% of remote workers said productivity suffered, with the other half of approximately saying that working from home actually made them more productive. So instead, these employees, sitting at home, 75% of them expressed concerns, specifically ranking team collaboration as the aspect of their work that suffered the most. And so in many ways, I think it's clear that we're still in the early innings of defining just how to be most effective and collaborative, in this hybrid digital world. And in my opinion, a big part of this is that we're talking about people, and people are inherently different from one another. I think we've accepted for a long time that there are different personality styles. For example, on the Myers-Briggs scale, I'm an INTJ. And so as a result, that gives you a bit of an insight into who I am, how I operate, and so on. And I think one of the next key waves here is a better understanding of the collaboration styles of our people. And what I mean by that is, interestingly, in our latest research, 57% of respondents self-identify with one or more of three preferred collaboration styles: expressive, relational, and introspective. And all that plays in, to how they've responded to the shift to remote and hybrid work during meetings. So let me give you a quick example. Those with an expressive style may have trouble engaging with colleagues in hybrid meetings dominated by talking heads. They're most productive when they have visual tools to help them express their ideas. On the other hand, those with the relational style can feel uncomfortable using some collaboration tools like screen sharing or polling. Instead, they need technologies that enable them and their teams to build deep and meaningful relationships, as well as bonding exercises or breakout sessions. And so I think as we come to better understand the collaboration styles of our people and our employees, we'll be able to empower them in the right way, to bring back that wave of collaboration that we need, for innovation to continue at the pace we need it to.
It's funny, isn't it? Because you would think it makes so much sense and so obvious that we need to understand everybody's individual and unique collaboration styles. So I'm curious, did it surprise you just how many underestimated that, and especially the hit collaboration has taken in that shift to remote working and all those different styles?
In some ways, it's not all that surprising. I mean, when the world switched almost overnight to remote work, in many ways, I think we as a workforce did better than most people would have expected with that magnitude of an immediate change. But I think it became pretty clear that while Zoom or other video conferencing technologies could help us bridge some of our immediate needs, to succeed in the long term with remote or hybrid work would require us to rethink our collaboration processes, cultures, and technologies. I recently participated in a panel on the future of work with one of the other participants being best-selling author Keith Ferrazzi, who recently penned a book full of research on this topic called Competing in the New World of Work. And one of the concepts he describes in the book is that we actually saw a lot of great innovation happen over the last couple of years with the businesses, which was enabled largely because of what he calls crisis agile. Many teams rose to the occasion, overcoming the process challenges or the system or technology challenges to help transform their businesses to respond to everything that was happening in the world. But at the same time now, a lot of folks are feeling burnout. Crisis agile is not sustainable. And so as we think about our culture and process and technologies, hopefully we're moving our organizations to a more sustainable form of agile and innovation.
And obviously you're slightly biased on this, but this is the reason I invited you on the podcast today. I mean, how can visual collaboration technology help restore that balance, would you say?
Yeah, I think there's a couple, key things to think about. First, it allows us to collaborate and communicate about the complex problems and opportunities where text is just insufficient on its own. Imagine trying to describe a process in words alone, the various steps, who's responsible for each of them, what happens in different scenarios, and so on. It could literally take pages and pages of text. But now imagine a visual depiction of that process. Everyone in a few seconds can grok that complexity in a dramatically faster and simpler way, driving understanding and alignment. So that's one. Text is just insufficient in many cases. Second, imagine that you want to take an idea and make that happen within your team or company. With any significant idea, there's typically going to be impacts to teams or people, to processes, to systems, and so on. And in short, we can move much faster in determining what has to change and how things should work tomorrow if we have the visual blueprint for our business. Or in other words, if we know how our people, processes, and systems work today. And then, Neil, finally, I'd say it levels the playing field for collaboration. As I mentioned previously with those collaboration styles, we've all been in meetings that are dominated by the loudest voice. But when you actually bring people together on a shared canvas, it allows everyone's voices to be heard through ideation, through voting and prioritization, and through all the other steps of that visual collaboration process. And so as we think about what the new normal should look like, we fundamentally believe that visual collaboration has to play a central role in that.
And presumably, after everything that we've talked about today, there isn't such a thing as a one-size-fit-all or a cookie-cutter approach to collaboration technology or visual collaboration technology, is there? Because everybody's different, right?
Absolutely. Clearly some best practices are emerging, both in terms of technologies and processes, cultural changes. That said, if we go back to what we talked about earlier, there's all these different collaboration styles, which implies that there should be some nuance and difference in how we approach collaboration with our teams. And interestingly, I think that likely means more training is required for many of our managers who are going to be closest to these teams and helping decide what that best collaboration process should be for their team specifically. And so again, surely some best practices, but as you said, I don't think there's going to be a one-size-fits-all approach that is fully optimal.
And what I'd like to try and do, as a company trusted by 99% of the Fortune 500. I'd love to try and bring to life everything that we've talked about today, because there's a lot of people hearing about this kind of thing for the first time, a lot of people interested in digging a little bit deeper. So can I ask you share a few use cases of how your tech is helping businesses and help listeners understand how it will, how it might work in their world too, because I think it's so valuable.
Absolutely. Well, maybe let me rattle off a couple quick examples that I think brings this to life. First, strategic planning. A specific example of this for me is a large technology company that we have who, as a customer, who originally would fly in all members of their product organization to take part in a quarterly planning process. And they would brainstorm using sticky notes for potential ideas or work to be done that quarter. They would then actually link these stickies together on the wall with string to identify key dependencies. And then they would try to organize all that work by when it would be done and the team responsible. And while this worked well when they were smaller, as they quickly grew, it became much more challenging and much more expensive to have everyone in this one physical room at headquarters. And so they moved to Lucid to replicate and up-level that experience digitally, where literally they can now have hundreds of people involved, regardless of location, all with their voices heard through the brainstorming and voting and prioritization process. And at the end, they have a living document that they can continue to refine. And in their specific case, actually leverage that directly into other systems like Jira via our integrations, where their development teams can start working, rather than having all of that on a physical wall in an office somewhere. And so all teams go through the strategic planning process in some form or another, and Lucid's playing a critical role in enabling that. Second, I would say digital transformation. More than ever, I think CIOs have felt in the last couple of years the need to accelerate their digital transformation, and specifically modernizing, standardizing, and evolving the systems that are critical to their business. And the first step of that is to actually understand how all the processes and systems work today, even in their outdated or legacy form. Then to envision what it should be and what the ideal state is for tomorrow. And finally, to really work through what that migration path looks like to move quickly in that transformation while not disrupting core business operations. And so Lucid Chart is the perfect technology for the digital transformation process for CIOs and others to help visualize all of those processes and systems, how they function today and what to build for tomorrow. Ultimately, again, to become that visual blueprint for how a business actually functions. And so those are two of literally thousands of deep use cases that exist within, that broad user base of millions of users. And as you said, many of the world's greatest companies.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share some of those stories, bring the topic to life with me today. But before I let you go, I like to have a little bit of fun with my guests before I let them go. And I'm going to ask you to leave something else for everyone listening now. And that is a book that has inspired you, or maybe your favourite song that we can add to our Spotify playlist. All I ask is you leave us with a story behind that choice. So what are you going to go with?
Well, I'm going to go with a song to add to the playlist if it's not already there. One of my favorite songs would be Chicago's Saturday in the Park. And I was named after my uncle, who actually was killed as a relatively young man. And I remember listening to this song, one day, and my dad coming in and asking me if I knew sort of the relevance of that song. I was just enjoying it. He said, well, this was actually your Uncle David's favorite song. And since then, I've always loved it, largely just because of the joy behind the tune. And so Chicago's Saturday in the Park.
I need to check that out. I've listened to a lot of Chicago throughout my life, but I don't know that one. Was that early Chicago, early 70s kind of time? Would that be?
It would be early. That's right.
Awesome. Well, I'll get that added to the Spotify playlist. I'll be checking that out myself. And for everybody listening that just wants to find out more information about Lucid and all the topics we talked about today, what's the best starting point for that? And equally, contact your team if they've got any questions.
Certainly. Please visit us at lucid.co or Lucid Software on any of the typical social platforms.
Excellent. Well, I'll add all those links to the show notes so people can find you nice and easily. But I can't thank you enough for coming on here, talking about that, but also sharing your very personal origin story and leaving us with that song too, and the beautiful story behind it. So just a big thank you from me, Dave, for taking the time to sit down and share that with me today.
Likewise. Thanks, Dill. Great to spend some time.
The fact that Lucid is valued at $3 billion and trusted by 99% of the Fortune 500 is incredible. They must be doing something right. But when you dig a little bit deeper, they're connecting candidates and employees and helping them clarify complexity, collaborate visually, and progress opportunities to advance, no matter where they're located or where they are working and on whatever device. And this is a very, very big problem that every business is looking to greater understand and solve. And how are you and your business solving this problem? What did you think of everything we discussed today? Were there things you agreed with, things you disagreed with? Or do you have any experiences that you'd like to share? Or maybe share your own story and come on this podcast and share that with me and everyone listening. As always, email me now, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram @Neil C. Hughes, and my website if you'd like to work with me, if you need help with business blogs, CEO, thought leadership blogs, or setting up your own podcast, check out techblogwriter.co.uk, where we're approaching 2,000 interviews, 2 million downloads. It's some pretty big numbers coming our way too. So today, the topic was visual collaboration technology. What is tomorrow's topic going to be, I hear you say? Well, I'll be back bright and early. I'm going to spin the wheel of misfortune. Where it stops, nobody knows, but there will be a completely different topic for us to explore together. So hopefully you'll join me, but a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.